Mountain Man discovers 5 horses left to die in the valley. You won't believe what happened. Snow whips across a lonely canyon. A rugged mountain man reins in his mule and freezes. 5 starving horses stand trapped in the drift skin and bone, eyes begging for mercy. He could ride on. No one would ever know. But he doesn't. He stays. That choice sparks a fight bigger than he could imagine. A widow from the tribes joins him, showing him the hidden trail to freedom. But when word spreads, ranch hands and soldiers come riding hard, claiming the animals as their own. Whispers of theft, lies burned into the horses' hides, and the town itself turns against him. In a land where law bows to power, and silence can mean death, one man must decide. Will he fight for the truth or lose everything again? And when the church bell tolls and the hoofbeats thunder back into town, will justice stand tall, or will the valley claim more than just horses? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Morning frost bit deep as Michael Boone guided his mule along the narrow mountain path. Fresh snow blanketed the Colorado highlands, pristine and treacherous. His breath clouded before him as he hunched deeper into his worn buckskin coat. The traps needed checking, though game had grown scarce in the valley these past weeks. His mule's hooves crunched through the crusty snow as they picked their way beside a steep ravine. The winter's silence pressed in around them, broken only by the whisper of wind through bare branches. Michael kept one gloved hand loose on the reins, his weathered face alert for signs of rabbit or fox tracks that might lead to a successful trap. That's when he heard it. A weak nickering carried on a bitter wind. Michael reined his mule to a halt, head cocked. The sound came again, plaintive and feeble. Something stirred in his chest, an old ache he thought long buried. "Whoa there, girl," he murmured, guiding his mount toward the sound. They descended carefully into a gully where scrub willows grew thick along a frozen creek bed. The branches crackled beneath the mule's careful steps. What he found made his throat tighten. 5 horses stood huddled among the willows, their ribs showing sharp beneath dull winter coats. Their breaths came in ragged puffs of steam as they lifted their heads to watch him approach. A young colt, no more than a few months old, trembled on spindly legs beside its mother. "Lord have mercy," Michael breathed. The horses had been abandoned here to die, left to struggle through deep snow with no feed or shelter. Tangled in the willow branches, they couldn't even search for grass beneath the drifts. The sight struck him like a physical blow. Memories rushed back, his cavalry days, the steady mount that had carried him through countless patrols. And Dancing Cloud, the Apache scout whose tracking skills had saved Michael's unit from ambush. The man had become a friend, teaching Michael the desert ways until the day orders came to relocate the tribe. Michael had followed those orders, staying silent as Dancing Cloud's people were marched from their homeland. He'd lost his horse in the ensuing chaos, but it was his conscience that bore the deeper wounds. Now these abandoned horses stood before him, their eyes dull with hunger and cold. The responsible thing would be to ride on, check his traps, tend to his own survival. Winter was lean enough without 5 more mouths to feed, but the colt stumbled, pressing against its mother's flank. The Mare turned her head to nuzzle the youngster, even in her weakness showing care for her baby. Michael's chest ached at the sight. He couldn't leave them. Whatever hard logic said, his heart wouldn't allow it. The sun was already sliding toward the western peaks as Michael dismounted. He pulled his axe from his saddlebags and began gathering the driest willow branches he could find. The horses watched him warily as he worked, but they were too weak to flee. "Easy there," he murmured as he approached with an armload of branches. "Just trying to help is all." He offered the willow twigs to the nearest Mare. She stretched her neck forward, sniffing cautiously before taking a tentative bite. The bark wasn't much, but it would give them something in their bellies until he could figure out a better solution. Michael gathered more branches as the light faded, piling them where the horses could reach. Then he cleared a patch of ground and set up his small camp, gathering wood for a fire. The flames cast dancing shadows on the snow as darkness settled over the valley. He couldn't save them all, maybe, but he had to try. The alternative meant carrying another weight on his conscience, and he already bore enough of those. The colt nickered softly in the gathering night. Michael pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders, watching the horses through the firelight. Their breath frosted in the air as they nibbled at the willow branches. "We'll sort something out," he told them quietly. "Come morning, we'll figure a way." The stars emerged one by one overhead, sharp and bright in the crystal mountain air. Michael settled back against his saddle, preparing for a long night's watch. The horses needed him. This time, he wouldn't turn away. The eastern sky brightened slowly, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of rose and gold. Michael's bones ached from the cold night as he gathered kindling for a small fire. The horses had survived until dawn, though the colt's breathing worried him. Its sides heaved with each breath, steam rising in the frigid air. Michael dug through his mule's panniers, finding a few precious scraps of jerky and a handful of grain. He approached the horses slowly, speaking in low tones. "Here now, let's get something in those bellies of yours." The nearest Mari's ears pricked forward at the smell of food. She stretched her neck toward his outstretched hand, lips carefully picking up the grain. The others watched, too weak to push forward, but their eyes followed his movements. He divided the meager offerings among them, his heart heavy. The food wouldn't last long, and the horses were in no condition to travel far. The valley walls rose steep on all sides, the main trail too treacherous for weakened animals. Michael ran a hand over his beard, conscience warring with practicality. He could ride for help, but the nearest settlement was 2 days away. The horses might not last that long alone. The sound of crunching snow snapped his attention up. His hand moved instinctively toward his rifle before he spotted the figure emerging from the trees, a woman, leading a sturdy pack pony. Her dark hair was bound back beneath a wool shawl, and she moved with quiet confidence through the deep snow. She paused at the edge of the clearing, studying him with careful eyes. Michael straightened slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Morning, ma'am," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Good morning." Her voice was clear and steady. She gestured toward the horses. "These animals are suffering. Found them yesterday, trapped in these willows. Been trying to keep them alive through the night." Michael watched as she moved closer, noting the traditional Navajo dress beneath her heavy coat. "Name's Michael Boone. Anna Yazzie." She nodded briefly. "I am traveling to my brother's family on the reservation." Her eyes swept over the horses with practiced assessment. "The young one needs shelter soon. Ain't disagreeing there. But they're too weak to make it up the main trail, and I don't know these valleys well enough to find another way." Anna moved carefully among the horses, touching their flanks and checking their legs. The animals accepted her presence calmly, as if sensing her knowledge. She paused, looking up at the valley walls, then pointed toward a barely visible break in the rocks. "There is an old deer trail there, used by our hunters. It winds up through that pass, narrow, but not so steep. These horses could manage it, with care and time." Hope stirred in Michael's chest. "You know the way?" She nodded. "I will show you. But we must start soon, while the day is young." They worked together through the morning hours, carefully freeing the horses from the willows and getting them moving. Anna led the way, her pack pony breaking trail through the snow. Michael brought up the rear, encouraging the stragglers with gentle words and occasional handfuls of grain from his dwindling supply. The hidden trail twisted up through the rocks, barely wide enough for the horses but manageable in single file. Anna picked the path with sure knowledge, showing them where to step and which turns to take. Several times they had to stop and rest the animals, but she never showed impatience. Michael found himself studying her as they worked, the quiet confidence in her movements, the gentle way she handled the nervous colt. She spoke little, but her actions showed both skill and compassion. Skill and compassion. As the sun began its westward slide, they reached a natural clearing sheltered by thick pines. A stream trickled unfrozen nearby, and the snow was shallower under the trees. "We can make camp here," Anna said. "The horses need rest." Michael nodded, already gathering fallen logs to create a crude corral. Anna helped him drag the heavy wood, and together they built a rough pen that would keep the horses contained through the night. When the work was done, she brought out dried venison from her packs and added it to a pot of melted snow. The rich smell of stew soon filled the clearing. They sat near the fire, its warmth welcome after the long day's work. "Much obliged for your help," Michael said quietly. "Don't know what I'd have done without that trail you showed us." Anna stirred the stew thoughtfully. "The Creator puts help in our path when it is needed. You showed kindness to these animals that deserves kindness in return." Steam rose from their tin cups as they ate, the horses moving quietly in their makeshift pen. Though they were strangers, the shared work had created a foundation of trust. Michael felt some of his usual wariness ease as they talked softly of horses and mountain trails, sharing knowledge earned through years of hard experience. The fire crackled between them, pushing back the gathering darkness. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, both people and horses had found shelter from the bitter cold. Dawn painted the sky in pale watercolors as Michael and Anna prepared for the journey to his cabin. The horses nickered softly, stronger after a night's rest but still weak from their ordeal. Michael checked their makeshift pen, his weathered hands testing the lashed logs. "They seem steadier this morning," he said, watching as Anna offered handfuls of grain from her own supplies. "Yes, but the journey will tax them." She straightened, adjusting her shawl against the morning chill. "We must go slowly." The sun climbed higher as they guided the horses down from their sheltered camp. Michael led his mule at the front, breaking trail through fresh snow, while Anna brought up the rear with her pack pony. Between them, the 5 rescued horses picked their way carefully through the drifts. The weakest Mara stumbled often, her legs trembling with fatigue. Each time, they would pause, letting the animals rest. During these stops, Anna's voice would rise in gentle song, melodies without words that seemed to float on the winter air. The horses' ears would prick forward, their breathing settling into calmer rhythms. "Those songs," Michael said during one such rest, "they help quiet them. My grandmother taught them to me," Anna replied, her hand resting on the colt's neck. "She said music speaks to troubled hearts, whether human or animal." They pressed on through the morning hours. The terrain grew more familiar to Michael as they approached his homestead. By late afternoon, the sun was already slipping toward the western peaks when his cabin came into view. A sturdy structure of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney, set against a backdrop of towering pines. A lean-to barn stood beside it, its weathered boards offering shelter from the prevailing winds. Michael felt a flutter of anxiety, seeing his humble home through another's eyes. But Anna's expression showed only appreciation for its practical construction. "The barn will shield them from the wind," she noted, helping him lead the horses into the covered space. Michael nodded, already spreading hay from his winter store. It was meant for his mule through the cold months ahead, and using it for 5 more horses would stretch his supplies dangerously thin. But watching the animals lower their heads to feed, their bodies finally relaxing into safety, he knew he couldn't have chosen differently. "It may get lean before spring," he admitted, measuring the remaining hay with his eyes. "The Creator provides," Anna said simply, "and you have chosen mercy over caution. That carries its own blessing." The early winter darkness was falling as they stepped into the cabin. Michael lit the lamp and stirred the banked coals in the hearth, adding split logs until flames caught and spread their warmth. The familiar space felt different with another person present, less hollow somehow. He set about preparing a simple meal while Anna arranged her shawl on a peg by the door. The lamp's glow softened the cabin's rough-hewn walls, catching the few personal touches. A carved wooden horse on the mantel, a well-worn Bible on a shelf. Over bowls of beans and cornbread, Anna spoke quietly of her life. "My husband was killed 3 summers ago," she said, her eyes distant. "The soldiers came through our camp at dawn. There was no reason, just fear and anger wearing blue uniforms." Michael's hands tightened on his cup, memories of his own army days rising like smoke. The orders he'd followed, the trust he'd broken, the weight of silence when he should have spoken out. "Since then, I travel between my relatives," Anna continued. "My brother's family, my cousin's camp. But nowhere feels like home anymore." Michael nodded, understanding more than he could express. His own isolation was chosen, but it grew from similar soil, loss, regret, the need to step away from a world that had proved too harsh. They sat in comfortable quiet as the fire crackled. Through the cabin's walls came the soft sounds of horses shifting in the barn, peaceful night sounds that spoke of safety and rest. The lamp's flame drew long shadows on the walls, but they seemed less lonely than on other nights. When snow began falling again, Michael stepped onto the porch to check the animals one last time. The flakes drifted down in the darkness, adding another layer to the white blanket covering his small homestead. In the barn, the horses dozed on their feet, hay scattered around them like a promise of care to come. Standing there, Michael felt a certainty settle in his heart. These horses, this woman, their arrival as he struggled with his solitude, it wasn't mere chance. God's hand was at work here, though he'd long since stopped looking for such signs. He didn't know where this path might lead, but for the first time in years, he felt ready to follow it. The morning sun cast long shadows across the snow-covered yard as Michael and Anna tended to the rescued horses. 2 days of care had already brought visible improvement. Their ribs still showed, but their eyes were brighter, and they moved with more strength. Michael stirred a pot of warm mash, adding a handful of dried herbs Anna had provided. "They're coming along well," he said, carrying the mixture to the makeshift feeding trough. Anna nodded, running gentle hands over the colt's withers. "The worst of the rope burns are healing." Another week of proper feeding, and the sound of approaching hoofbeats cut through the crisp mountain air. 3 riders appeared around the bend, their horses kicking up snow as they approached the cabin. Michael straightened, instinctively moving closer to the barn entrance. The lead rider, a hard-faced man in his 40s, reined in sharply. His well-oiled boots and boss-man stance marked him as a ranch foreman. 2 younger men flanked him, their expressions carefully blank. "Name's Briggs," the foreman announced, his voice carrying the edge of authority. Running Bar X Ranch down in the valley, his gaze swept past Michael to fix on the horses in the barn. "Seems you found some of our strays." Michael kept his voice neutral. "Found them half dead in Thompson's Ravine 3 days back. That so?" Briggs swung down from his saddle, spurs jingling. "Well, we've been looking for these animals. They wandered off during that last storm." He stepped closer to the barn, pulling out a folded paper. "Got the brand registrations right here." Michael accepted the document, studying the crude drawings while Anna continued tending the horses, her movements deliberate and watchful. The brands looked official enough, but something felt wrong about the whole situation. "Strange they'd wander so far," Michael said carefully. "Especially all together like that." Briggs's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Horses do peculiar things in a storm. Now, if you'll just help us get them saddled up." "Wait." Anna's quiet voice carried unexpected authority. She knelt beside the nearest mar, brushing away snow and winter hair from its flank. "Michael, look at this." He moved closer, bending to examine where she pointed. The brand was there, matching Briggs's paper, but something about it wasn't right. Beneath the surface mark, older scars told a different story. "These marks," Anna whispered in low tones. "They're burned over original brands." I recognized the pattern beneath. These horses belonged to Navajo and Apache families before the army seized them. Briggs stepped forward impatiently. "What's the holdup?" "Those are Bar X animals, plain as day." Michael straightened slowly, years of cavalry experience helping him read the tension in the hired men's postures. Their hands stayed too close to their gun belts for casual conversation. "I reckon we need some proper proof of ownership," Michael said, choosing his words with care. "Maybe the sheriff could verify these papers." Briggs's face darkened. "You calling me a liar, mountain man?" "No, sir. Just being cautious about property claims." Michael kept his stance relaxed but ready. "These animals nearly died from neglect. That makes me particular about who takes them. Listen here," Briggs snarled, jabbing a finger toward Michael's chest. "I don't need some hermit questioning Bar X business. I'll fetch the sheriff all right, to arrest you for horse theft." "That would be your right," Michael replied evenly. "Until then, the horses stay here." The foreman's face flushed red. He spun on his heel, storming back to his horse. "You'll regret this insolence," he spat, swinging into the saddle. "Nobody crosses Bar X without consequences." The three men rode off in a flurry of snow, leaving an uneasy silence behind. Michael watched until they disappeared around the bend before turning to Anna. "You're certain about those brands?" She nodded grimly. "I helped my husband raise horses before." Her voice caught slightly. "Before the soldiers came. I know our family marks. These were stolen, then marked again to hide the theft." Michael ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of the situation settle on his shoulders. The easy path would be to let Briggs take the horses, avoid trouble, return to his solitary life. But looking at the animals they'd nursed back from death's door, he knew he couldn't do it. "We can't give them up," he said finally. "Not without knowing the truth of it." "No," Anna agreed softly. "These horses carry the stories of my people. To return them to thieves would dishonor those who lost them." She touched the Mare's neck gently. "But Briggs will return, and not alone." Michael nodded, knowing they just stepped into dangerous waters. Bar X was the biggest spread in the valley, used to throwing its weight around. Standing against them wouldn't be easy. He looked at Anna, seeing the quiet determination in her face, and at the horses they'd saved. Sometimes a man had to choose between what was easy and what was right. He'd made the wrong choice once before in his army days. He wouldn't make the same mistake again. The wind moaned through the cabin's chinks like a lost soul seeking shelter. Michael lay on his bedroll near the hearth, staring at the dancing shadows on the rough-hewn ceiling. Sleep eluded him, chased away by memories he'd tried for years to forget. Across the room, Anna stirred on the pallet he'd made for her. "You are troubled," she said softly. It wasn't a question. "Just the wind," he replied, but they both knew it was more. A fire crackled, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the horses nickered softly in the barn, their sounds barely audible above the storm. Those horses. Something about their desperate state had cracked open a door in Michael's mind he'd kept firmly shut. "I was a cavalry scout," he said finally, the words coming slow and painful. "Years ago, down near the Apache territories. We had orders to clear the land." His voice grew hoarse. "I followed those orders. Watched good people lose everything they owned." Anna was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried no judgment, only a deep sadness. "Many of our families lost their herds that way. The soldiers came in spring, when the lambs were new. They took everything, horses, sheep, even the goats." She drew a slow breath. That winter, the old ones and little ones died from hunger. Michael closed his eyes, the weight of old guilt pressing down like a physical thing. There was an Apache scout, man named Tall Oak. He'd saved my life once, warning me about an ambush. His fingers traced a scar on his arm absently. When the orders came to raid his family's camp, I said nothing. Did nothing. Just watched it happen. The fire popped, sending up a shower of sparks. Outside, the wind howled fiercer, rattling the cabin's shutters. That's why these horses cut so deep, he continued. Seeing them left to die like that, it brought it all back. The faces of those we wronged. The stock we drove off. The children crying. Anna moved closer to the fire, her face grave in the flickering light. The past cannot be undone, she said. But now you have a chance to choose differently. As dawn's first pale light crept through the windows, they made their decision. The horses couldn't stay at the cabin. Briggs would return with force. But Michael knew of a line shack, hidden in a narrow canyon where he sometimes stayed during trapping season. They could move the horses there until they found a way to return them to their rightful owners. They set out as soon as it was light enough to see, fighting against the growing storm. Michael led the way on his mule, while Anna brought up the rear, keeping the weakened horses together. Snow drove sideways, thick enough to hide the mountains. The wind cut through their clothes like icy knives. The horses struggled in the deep drifts, but Anna's gentle encouragement kept them moving. She spoke to them in her native tongue, soft words that seemed to give them strength. Michael marveled at her endurance, hour after hour through the brutal weather. Never complaining, never faltering. By late afternoon, they reached the line shack. It was crude shelter, just 4 walls and a roof, but it would have to do. They got the horses inside, out of the wind. The space was tight with all of them together, but the animals' body heat soon warmed the small building. Michael got a fire going in the small stove, while Anna tended to the horses, checking for any damage from the journey. The storm raged outside, but inside, an odd peace settled over them all. As darkness fell, Anna began to sing. Her voice was low and melodic, the words in her native language flowing like water over stones. The horses' ears pricked forward, their eyes growing soft and peaceful. Michael found himself humming along, though he didn't know the words. It felt strange at first. He couldn't remember the last time he'd made music of any kind. But something about the moment, about sharing this small space with these souls they'd saved, melted a little more of the ice around his heart. The horses dozed, steam rising from their backs in the warm air. Anna's songs filled the shack, weaving together with the storm's voice outside. And Michael, who had spent so many years in solitude, felt something shift inside him, like a frozen stream beginning to thaw in spring. He looked at Anna, her face serene in the lantern light as she sang, and knew they'd made the right choice. Whatever trouble lay ahead, they would face it together, standing firm for what was right, the way he should have done all those years ago. The morning sun cast long shadows across the snow as Michael prepared for the ride into Willow Creek. They needed supplies, flour, salt, more grain for the horses, and staying hidden would only fuel suspicion. Anna insisted on remaining behind with the horses, her dark eyes serious as she bid him safe journey. Michael guided his mule down the winding trail, powder snow crunching beneath steady hooves. The weather had cleared, leaving the world sparkling and pristine, but his heart grew heavier with each mile toward town. By mid-morning, the scattered buildings of Willow Creek came into view, weather-beaten structures strung along the single dusty street like beads on a thread. He tied his mule outside Jensen's Mercantile, brushing snow from his coat before stepping inside. The bell above the door announced his entrance with a cheerful jingle that seemed at odds with the sudden silence that fell. Several customers turned away, busying themselves with examining goods on the shelves. Old man Jensen stood behind the counter, his usually friendly face now stern beneath his gray mustache. Mr. Boone, he said stiffly. Need some supplies, Michael said, setting his list on the scarred wooden counter. Jensen's eyes barely skimmed the paper. Quite a lot here. Feeding more than just yourself these days? My coin's good as anyone's, Michael replied evenly. Maybe so. Jensen began gathering the items, movement sharp with disapproval. But good coin does not always mean good business. Word is you are harboring stolen property. That so? Michael kept his voice neutral, though his jaw tightened. Sheriff will not look kindly on this matter. Jensen thumped the bags of flour down harder than necessary. Nor will Judge Matthews when it comes to that. Best set things right while you can. Michael paid in silence, gathered his supplies, and stepped back into the cold morning air. He could feel eyes watching from the shop windows, could hear the murmur of voices following his path down the street. At the livery stable, he needed grain for the horses. A soldier in a dust-covered cavalry uniform stood in the doorway, cleaning his nails with a pocket knife. His cold gaze tracked Michael's every move. The message was clear. The army had interest in this matter too. The hostility of the town pressed in around him like a physical weight. These were people he had traded with for years, had helped with bond raisings and cattle drives. Now they looked at him as if he were a stranger, worse, an enemy. Worse, an enemy. Only outside the white-painted church did he find a friendly face. Reverend Samuel Carter was sweeping snow from the steps, his black coat flapping in the wind. The preacher's weathered face creased in a genuine smile. "Michael Boone," he called out warmly. "It has been too long since you darkened my church door. Been keeping to myself." "Reverend, so I have heard." Carter leaned on his broom, eyes kind but shrewd. "I have heard other things as well." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Reckon you have. The truth often lies deeper than surface talk," Carter said quietly. "And a man must answer to his conscience before he answers to other men." He stepped closer, voice dropping further. "Do what you know to be right, Michael. Let others judge as they will." The words settled into Michael's heart like a warm coal, bringing unexpected comfort. He nodded gratefully and turned to go, but Carter spoke once more. "Remember, God's justice often moves through humble hands." The ride back to the line shack seemed longer, Michael's thoughts churning like the snow clouds gathering again on the horizon. The sun was setting by the time he arrived, painting the western sky in sheets of gold and crimson. Anna met him at the door, helping to unload the supplies. The horses nickered softly from inside, and the small stove had the shack warm and welcoming. Michael described the town's reaction as they put the goods away. "They think we are thieves," he finished. "And worse." Anna paused in slicing bread for their evening meal. "My grandmother used to say, 'Truth walks slowly, but it walks.'" Her steady gaze met his. "We know what is right. That is enough for now." They ate their simple meal of beans and bread in companionable quiet. Outside, the wind picked up, driving snow against the walls of their shelter. But inside, the lamp burned bright. The horses drowsed peacefully, and their shared purpose gave them strength. They might be outcasts now, but they were not alone. Michael thought of Reverend Carter's words about conscience and justice. Whatever trials lay ahead, he knew they had chosen the right path. The warmth of that certainty, and of this small community they had built, would have to sustain them through the gathering storm. The line shack became a sanctuary of healing over the following days. Each morning began with Michael chopping wood while frost still silvered the trees. The rhythmic thunk of his axe scattered jays from their perches as he built the woodpile higher, ensuring warmth for both people and horses. Inside the shack, Anna moved with quiet purpose, mixing warm mashes of grain and herbs for their charges. She had a way with the animals that seemed almost magical to Michael. Her gentle hands and soft voice coaxed them to eat, to trust, to heal. "This one," she said one morning, stroking the dappled mare's nose. "We call Taka Rain." The horse nuzzled her palm, seeking treats. "And the bay gelding is Jill Mountain." Michael stumbled over the unfamiliar sounds, but Anna was patient, making him repeat each name until he got it right. "Names matter," she explained, brushing tangles from Rain's mane. "They give honor, show respect. These horses carried our families, shared our hardships. They deserve to be known." He watched her work, noticing how the horses' coats had begun to shine with renewed health. The colt that had been so weak now pranced around his mother, kicking up snow with spindly legs. Even the oldest gelding held his head higher, pride returning with strength. In the evenings, they shared simple meals by the crackling stove. One night, as wind moaned through the pines outside, Anna spoke of her faith. "The Creator sees all things," she said, firelight dancing across her features. "Even here, in hiding, we are watched over, protected." Michael stared into the flames, memories stirring. "Used to believe that myself. Used to pray regular, like my ma taught me." He paused, old pain surfacing. "Then came that day with White Hawk, my Apache scout friend. We'd worked together 2 years. He'd saved my life once. But when the commander ordered us to," his voice roughed, "I just stood there. Didn't speak up. Didn't stop it." Anna's dark eyes held understanding rather than judgment. "Even in silence, prayers wait for you," she said softly. "Like seeds beneath snow, ready to grow when spring comes." Her words settled into his heart, warming places long frozen. Each day spent working beside her, watching her quiet strength and unwavering faith, stirred something in him he'd thought long dead. He found himself studying her face when she wasn't looking, admiring the grace of her movements, the wisdom in her eyes. But he kept these thoughts carefully guarded, uncertain of their welcome. A week passed, marked by small victories. The horses grew stronger, more spirited, but so did Michael's awareness that they couldn't hide forever. Their supplies would run low eventually, and spring was still weeks away. More importantly, the pressure of secrecy weighed on them both. One evening, as they finished their supper of beans and cornbread, Michael set down his tin plate. "Been thinking," he said slowly. "We can't keep running. Need to face this matter square on." Anna looked up, waiting for him to continue. "What if we took the horses to the reservation agent? Show him the original brands, prove where they came from. Make it official-like." He watched her face carefully. "Might be risky, but seems better than hiding." She was quiet for a long moment, considering. "The agent, Mr. Harrison. He's not always fair to my people." Her fingers worried at her shawl. "But you are right. Truth needs sunlight to grow strong." They spent the next day preparing. Michael checked and repaired tack while Anna packed supplies: dried meat, grain, extra blankets. Neither spoke much, both understanding the gravity of their decision. Everything they'd worked for could be lost if the agent sided against them. Yet as they worked, a sense of rightness settled over them. The horses sensed it too, standing calmer, more alert, as if they knew change was coming. Even the weather seemed to approve. The sky cleared to sharp winter blue, and the wind died to whispers. That night, their last before setting out, they sat closer than usual by the fire. The familiar warmth of each other's presence had become a comfort neither wanted to name, but both treasured. Michael found himself thinking of Anna's words about prayers waiting like seeds beneath snow. Perhaps his own faith, like these horses, could find new life after all. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. But tonight, in this moment, they had trust in each other, strength in their purpose, and hope in their hearts. It would have to be enough. Sunday morning dawned bright and cold over Willow Creek. Michael and Anna worked in companionable silence, saddling the 5 horses outside the line shack. Their breath frosted in the crisp air as they checked cinches and bridles one final time. "Ready?" Michael asked, adjusting Rain's hackamore. Anna nodded, her dark eyes steady. The Creator goes before us. They mounted up and began the slow procession into town, leading the other horses in a line. The animals' hooves crunched through crusty snow, their newly restored strength evident in prancing steps and lifted heads dot as they approached Willow Creek's main street. Folks began emerging from their homes and shops. Women in Sunday dress gathered on porches, whispering behind gloved hands. Men stopped to stare, some with sneers, others with undisguised curiosity. "Look at that Indian woman. Bold as brass," one woman muttered loud enough to hear. But Anna sat straight in her saddle, dignity wrapped around her like a blanket. Michael felt pride surge in his chest at her quiet courage. They rode directly to the sheriff's office, where Calvin Dorsey was just pinning on his badge. The lawman's face fell when he saw them approaching. "Now, Michael," he began, "don't go stirring up trouble on the Lord's Day." Michael dismounted, boots hitting the wooden sidewalk with purpose. "No trouble, Sheriff. Just want an official inquiry into these brands." He gestured to the horses. "Figure you're bound by law to investigate tampering." Sheriff Dorsey shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the big rancher's house on the hill. "Ain't that simple, and you know it. Mr. Harrison has influence. The law is the law," came a firm voice. Reverend Carter strode up, his Bible tucked under one arm. "And these good people," he gestured to the growing crowd, "will witness that it's properly upheld." The Reverend's presence seemed to straighten the sheriff's spine. More townspeople gathered, drawn by the drama unfolding. Michael noticed several of his regular trading partners among them, men who knew him as honest if solitary. "Reckon we could ride out to the agency," Dorsey said finally. "Let Harrison examine the brands proper-like." And so the unlikely procession formed, Michael and Anna leading the horses, flanked by the sheriff and Reverend Carter, with half the town trailing behind. They made their way toward the reservation agency building on the town's outskirts. Agent Harrison met them on the porch, his face pinched with annoyance. "What's all this about?" "These horses show signs of brand tampering," Sheriff Dorsey explained. "Mr. Boone's requesting an official examination." The agent's eyes narrowed at Anna. "And what's she doing here?" "She can speak for herself," Michael said firmly. "For herself," Michael said firmly. Anna stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "These are Navajo and Apache horses, taken by soldiers 2 summers ago. I knew the families who raised them. See here," she pointed to Rain's flank, beneath, "the burn marks. That's the sign of Yellowknife's people." The crowd pressed closer, straining to see. Harrison couldn't ignore so many witnesses. Grudgingly, he bent to examine the brands. "Look there," someone called. Plain as day, they burned over the old marks. The agent straightened, tugging at his vest. "Well, yes, there appears to be evidence of modification." A cheer went up from the crowd. Michael felt tension drain from his shoulders as Anna's hand found his arm, squeezing gently. "I'll need to file papers," Harrison said stiffly. "But the horses can stay with you until proper ownership is established." The gathered townspeople surged forward with congratulations. Reverend Carter beamed, shaking Michael's hand. Even Sheriff Dorsey managed a grudging nod as the crowd dispersed. Michael and Anna led their charges home through the lengthening shadows. The horses seemed to sense the victory, stepping lively despite their long day. That evening, they sat before the hearth in Michael's cabin, sharing a simple meal of beef stew and biscuits. The horses grazed peacefully in the pasture, their shapes dark against the snow in the gathering dusk. "Reckon I owe you a proper thank you," Michael said quietly. "For everything?" Anna smiled. "The Creator brings help when needed, sometimes through unexpected hands." Michael stared into the flames, feeling something shift inside him. "Been a long time since I prayed," he admitted. "Don't rightly remember how. Just speak from your heart," Anna said softly. Michael closed his eyes, words coming slow but sincere. "Lord, thank you for sending help when I needed it. for giving me courage to do right this time. 4. He paused, glancing at Anna for second chances. Outside, a horse nickered softly. Inside, the fire crackled, warming them both as they sat in peaceful silence, watching the flames dance and feeling the rightness of truth restored. The fire had burned low in the hearth when the first shot cracked through the night. Michael jerked awake in his chair, nearly knocking over the tin cup beside him. Anna was already on her feet, her face taut with alarm. More gunfire split the darkness. Horses screamed outside, their terror piercing the cold air. Michael grabbed his rifle and rushed to the door, his heart hammering. "Stay inside." He called to an Abdat. The yard exploded in chaos. Shadowy figures on horseback circled the corral, their shapes dark against the snow. Briggs' voice carried sharp and cruel. "Get those horses moving." Michael raised his rifle, but something hard struck the back of his head. Stars burst behind his eyes as he stumbled forward. Rough hands grabbed him from behind. He fought back, connecting with someone's jaw, but more attackers swarmed him. "Teach him proper respect," Briggs ordered. Fists rained down. A boot caught Michael's ribs. He curled inward, trying to protect himself as blows landed again and again. Through blurred vision, he saw soldiers, real soldiers in uniform, leading the horses away. Their hooves kicked up snow in the moonlight. "No." Anna's voice rang out. She had emerged from the cabin, defiant. "Take her too," Briggs commanded. "She's part of this theft." Michael tried to rise to help her, but another blow sent him sprawling. He heard Anna struggle, heard her fierce words in Navajo cut short. Then hoofbeats thundered away, taking both horses and Hope with them. The night grew quiet save for Michael's ragged breathing. Blood trickled warm down his face, freezing in the bitter air. His entire body screamed with pain. Somehow, he dragged himself back inside the cabin. The fire had died to embers. Michael's hand shook as he tended his wounds, cleaning cuts and wrapping his ribs as best he could. Every breath brought stabbing pain. Worse was the ache in his heart, knowing Anna was gone, likely thrown in some cold jail cell. He slumped in his chair, despair threatening to overwhelm him. His lips moved in halting prayer, the first real prayer he had attempted in years. "Lord, help me." "Help her, please." Dawn came harsh and unforgiving. Michael forced himself onto his mule, each movement agony. The ride into Willow Creek seemed endless, but he had to know where they had taken, and the saloon was already open. Morning regulars warming themselves with whiskey. As Michael limped past, laughter spilled out the batwing doors. "Ain't so high and mighty now, are you, Mountain Man?" Someone called. "That's what happens when you side with savages," another voice added. Michael ignored them, making his way to the sheriff's office. Calvin Dorsey wouldn't meet his eyes. "Can't help you, Michael," the sheriff said, studying his desk. "Army claims those horses were government property. Says your Indian woman was part of an organized theft ring. That's a lie, and you know it." Michael growled. Dorsey spread his hands helplessly. "My hands are tied." Military jurisdiction now. Fury and frustration burned in Michael's chest as he stumbled back onto the street. His wounds throbbed with each step. Where else could he turn? The answer came as Reverend Carter hurried toward him, concern etched on his weathered face. "Michael!" "I just heard." "Come inside. Let me tend those injuries properly." In the quiet of the church, the preacher cleaned Michael's cuts with gentle hands. "This isn't right," he said firmly. "God's justice doesn't work through brutality and lies." "They took her." Michael's voice cracked. "Took the horses, too. Everything we fought for. Gone in one night." "Not everything." The Reverend's eyes were steel. "Truth still stands. And I won't be silent about this injustice. Neither will others who witnessed yesterday's proof. What can we do?" Michael asked, his soul teetering on the edge of despair. First we pray, Carter said, gripping Michael's shoulder. Then we fight, not with fists, but with law and righteousness. There are good people in this town who won't stand for this. Once they know the truth. Michael bowed his head, body aching, heart heavy. Somewhere Anna sat in a cold cell, her dignity intact but her freedom stolen. The horses they had nursed back to health were again in cruel hands. Yet something in the preacher's words kindled a tiny spark of hope. "Teach me to pray again," Michael whispered. "Really pray. Like she showed me." Together, they knelt in the empty church, their words rising like smoke to the rafters above. Outside, the winter wind howled, but inside, faith began to flicker anew in Michael's darkest hour. Michael sat in his darkened cabin, a cold cup of coffee untouched beside him. His bruises had faded from angry purple to sickly yellow, but the ache in his soul remained sharp as ever. 4 days had passed since they took Anna. 4 days of silence broken only by the winter wind. He touched his swollen ribs, wincing. The physical pain he could bear. He'd known worse in his mountain years. But the emptiness of the cabin crushed him. No soft Navajo words floating across the room. No quiet humming as she worked. No horses nickering in the lean-to barn. "Where are you, Lord?" he whispered to the shadows. "Where were you when they came?" Only the settling logs answered, creaking in the cold. Michael's eyes drifted to his packed saddlebags by the door. He could leave. Ride north into Montana Territory, where no one knew his name. Start fresh where memories couldn't haunt him. But in the quiet nights, Anna's last words at the reservation agency echoed in his mind. "If you stand silent, the next valley will be filled with bones of the voiceless." She had spoken them so softly, yet they thundered in his heart now. He was pouring the cold coffee out when hoofbeats approached. His hand moved toward his rifle, but he recognized Reverend Carter's gentle knock. "Brought you some supplies," the preacher said, setting down a basket of bread and dried meat. His eyes took in Michael's hollow features. "You're looking better. Some color back in your face. Much obliged," Michael mumbled, but made no move toward the food. Carter settled into the other chair, his weathered face serious in the lamplight. "I've been praying about this situation. And listening. The Lord works in unexpected ways sometimes." Michael snorted softly. "Seems mighty unexpected to let good folks suffer while the wicked prosper. One of the soldiers came to me yesterday." Carter continued quietly. "Young fellow, new to the territory. His conscience is eating at him something fierce." Michael's attention sharpened. The preacher leaned forward, voice dropping. "There's a ledger in the commander's office. Shows every horse taken from native families these past 2 years. Documents the illegal seizures, the altered brands, everything. That soldier's seen it with his own eyes. A ledger?" Michael straightened despite his aching ribs. "With proof?" Carter nodded. "Proof enough to bring before the territorial governor. Enough to expose the whole operation." But getting to it, he left the sentence unfinished. Michael studied his calloused hands. Breaking into an army post meant death if he was caught. Yet that ledger could free Anna, restore the horses to their rightful owners, bring justice to light. "I ain't much for praying anymore," he said slowly. "But seems to me sometimes the Lord needs hands to do his work. Just remember vengeance belongs to God alone." Carter warned. "Truth is your weapon here, Michael. Not guns." They talked into the evening, the preacher sharing what his soldier contact had revealed about guard rotations and office layouts. When Carter finally rode away, purpose had rekindled in Michael's eyes. The next days passed in careful preparation. Michael exercised his healing muscles, rebuilt his strength. He gathered supplies, rope, dark clothes, medicines in case things went wrong. In his saddlebags, he packed dried beef and hardtack, flint and steel, extra ammunition. Each task was a prayer of its own kind. Each preparation reminded him of Anna's quiet strength, her unwavering faith that justice would prevail if good people stood firm. As dusk settled on the seventh day, Michael took out his old hunting knife. The blade had gone dull from seasons of skinning game. He worked it slowly across the whetstone, each stroke deliberate. The sharp edge that emerged wasn't meant for violence. It was a tool for survival, nothing more. The knife's gleam in the firelight reminded him of Anna's eyes that first morning they saved the horses together. Clear, purposeful, unafraid. He would need that same courage now. "I won't stay silent," he whispered to the empty cabin. Not this time. Outside, snow began falling again, thick flakes catching the last light. Michael knew the storms would hide his tracks, cover his passage into the army post. Even the weather seemed to be offering aid. He sheathed the newly sharpened knife, its weight familiar against his hip. Tomorrow he would begin the journey toward either justice or judgment. But tonight, in the quiet, he felt peace settle over him for the first time since they took Anna away. The path ahead was clear, though dangerous. Truth would light the way, as Reverend Carter said. And perhaps, Michael thought, that was answer enough to his prayers after all. The winter moon cast long shadows across the snow as Michael crept toward the army post. Each step crunched softly despite his care, and his breath frosted in the cold air. The stockade loomed ahead, its wooden walls dark against the starlit sky. He pressed himself against a pine tree, watching, waiting. Through gaps in the rough-hewn logs, lamplight flickered. Voices carried on the night air soldiers gathering for evening drinks, their laughter punctuated by the clink of tin cups. Michael's ribs ached as he crouched lower, remembering the beating that had left him bloody in the snow just days ago. The arranged meeting place was behind the stables, where shadows ran deepest. Michael counted heartbeats, timing the sentry's rounds just as Reverend Carter had described. When the guard passed, boots crunching away into darkness, he darted forward. The smell of horses and hay filled his nostrils as he pressed against the stable wall. Minutes crawled past. Had the soldier lost his nerve? But then came the softest scrape of leather on wood, and a figure emerged from the shadows. "Mr. Boone?" The whisper was barely audible. "I'm Corporal Hayes." Michael studied the young soldier's face in the dim light. Hayes looked hardly more than a boy, his eyes wide with fear. His hands trembled as he clutched something beneath his coat. "You have it?" Michael kept his voice low. Hayes glanced nervously over his shoulder before withdrawing a leather-bound book. The commander's ledger. Every horse they took, every brand they changed, it's all here. His fingers shook so badly he nearly dropped it. 2 years of roundups. Names, dates, locations. Michael took the ledger carefully, feeling its weight. Such a small thing to carry so much truth. He tucked it securely inside his coat. "I can't sleep anymore," Hayes continued, words tumbling out in an anguished whisper. "Seeing those families watching us take their horses. Children crying. I knew it wasn't right, but I followed orders anyway." He grabbed Michael's sleeve. "God forgive me, I followed orders. The Lord knows your heart," Michael said softly, remembering his own years of blind obedience. "But now you've chosen truth. That takes courage." Hayes released him, stepping back in the shadow. What if I testified? Told what I saw? Your word would carry weight," Michael said. "A soldier's oath means something, but it's your choice to make. I'll think on it." Hayes straightened his uniform, some of the fear leaving his face. "You better go. Guard change is coming soon." Michael nodded. "Thank you for doing what's right." He slipped away from the stables, moving quick and quiet through the darkness. At the stockade wall, he heard boots approaching and pressed himself flat against the rough wood. The sentry passed within arm's reach, rifle gleaming. Michael held his breath until the footsteps faded. Then he was running through the trees, snow spraying beneath his boots. The ledger thumped against his chest with each stride. Behind him, a dog started barking. Voices rose in the darkness. Have they discovered Hayes? Found the ledger missing? Michael pushed himself harder, ignoring the protest of his healing ribs. The miles blurred past as he alternated between running and walking, always keeping to the deepest shadows. The moon wheeled overhead, stars dimming as false dawn began to pale the eastern sky. He reached the preacher's parsonage as first light touched the mountain peaks. His legs trembled with exhaustion as he climbed the back steps. Carter opened the door at his knock, ushering him quickly inside. "Thank the Lord," the preacher whispered, helping Michael to a chair. "I've been praying all night." Michael withdrew the ledger with shaking hands. "Got it. Everything Hayes promised." Carter lit a lamp and began carefully turning pages. His eyes widened as he read. Names, descriptions, locations, even the price they got for each horse they sold. "This is damning evidence, Michael. Enough to free Anna? Get the horses back? Enough to bring down everyone involved." Carter closed the ledger gently. "But using it will take courage. The whole town needs to see the truth." Michael leaned back, bone-weary but determined. "Sunday, then. When everyone's gathered for service. You'll need to be ready," Carter warned. "They won't take this lying down." "I'm done being silent," Michael said quietly. "Done watching evil prosper while good folks suffer." The preacher squeezed his shoulder. "Rest now. I'll keep the ledger safe until Sunday." Michael nodded, too exhausted to move just yet. Outside the window, dawn was breaking over the mountains. Sunday would come soon enough, bringing either justice or judgment. But for now, the ledger was safe. The truth would finally come to light. The days crept by like molasses in winter. Michael spent long hours at Reverend Carter's parsonage, his body slowly mending from the brutal beating. Each morning, the preacher changed his bandages with gentle hands, applying salve to the purple bruises that marked his ribs. "The Lord works in his own time," Carter would say, cleaning a cut above Michael's eye. "We must be patient." But patience proved harder than bearing physical pain. Through the parsonage window, Michael watched townspeople hurry past, casting furtive glances at the house. Whispers traveled on the wind, how Anna sat alone in her cell, how Briggs strutted through town like a rooster in his yard. The leather-bound ledger became Michael's constant companion. He traced each entry with his finger, committing the details to memory. Dates, locations, descriptions of horses stolen from native families. Some nights, he could barely sleep, seeing the faces of those who had lost everything. Their grief merged with memories of his own past failures, when he had chosen silence over truth. "Knowledge ain't enough," Carter cautioned one evening, stoking the fire. "Some folks got hearts harder than winter ground." Michael nodded, running his thumb along the ledger's worn spine. "Then we'll speak plain truth and let God do the softening." In the quiet hours before dawn, Michael found himself praying again. The words came slow at first, rusty from disuse. But gradually, like a spring thaw, his heart began to open. He thought of Anna's quiet strength, her unwavering faith despite all she had lost. He remembered the way she had named each horse, giving them dignity even in their weakness. Dreams filled his nights, visions of sunlit meadows where rescued horses grazed freely. He saw his cabin transformed, smoke rising cheerfully from the chimney while Anna's laugh brightened the rooms. These images sustained him through the long days of waiting. When Saturday arrived, Michael insisted on helping prepare the church despite his healing wounds. The small building stood at the edge of town, its weathered boards silvered by sun and storm. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of pale winter light. "Trim them lamp wicks careful-like," Carter instructed, handing Michael the tools. "We'll need all the light we can get tomorrow." Michael worked steadily, moving from lamp to lamp. Each glass chimney he polished became a small beacon of hope. Outside, his axe rang against pine logs, splitting wood for the morning's fire. The familiar labor soothed his spirit, even as his ribs protested. Reminds me of cleaning my rifle in the cavalry, he told Carter as they stacked the wood. Making ready for whatever comes. The preacher paused, studying him. You've changed, Michael. There's peace in your eyes now, despite everything. Reckon so. Michael straightened slowly, easing his back. Can't outrun the Lord forever. He has his ways of finding us. They worked until dusk, sweeping floors and arranging hymn books. The simple tasks took on deeper meaning, each one a preparation for truth's unveiling. Michael thought of how Jesus had cleared the temple, driving out those who profited from corruption. Tomorrow would require similar courage, though of a different kind. That evening, Carter's wife, Sarah, served them a quiet supper. The preacher blessed the meal with special care, asking for wisdom and protection in the coming day. Michael bowed his head, adding his own silent prayers for Anna's safety, for justice to prevail, for hearts to be turned toward mercy. Later, in the small guest room, Michael sat by lamplight reading the ledger one final time. Each entry told a story of greed and betrayal, of families broken and trust destroyed. But tomorrow, God willing, truth would shine like the newly trimmed lamps, pushing back shadows of deception. He thought of Anna, alone in her cell, probably singing softly to herself as she always did in troubled times. The memory strengthened his resolve. Whatever came in the morning, he would stand firm, not for vengeance, but for restoration. As sleep finally claimed him, Michael's last conscious thought was of horses running free across sun-dappled meadows, their hooves drumming out a rhythm of hope. Sunday's dawn would bring what it would bring. They had prepared the way as best they could. The rest was in God's hands. The church bells rang clear across Willow Creek that Sunday morning. Townsfolk filed into Reverend Carter's small church, their boots squeaking on fresh-swept floors. Wooden pews creaked under their weight as they settled in, exchanging hushed whispers. 4 soldiers stood rigid at the back, hands resting near their holsters. Briggs lounged near the front pew, his expression smug as a well-fed cat. Michael waited outside, his bruised ribs aching in the cold. The 5 horses stood quietly beside him, their breaths frosting in the dawn air. He had retrieved them before sunrise, knowing where Briggs kept them penned. The animals seemed to sense the importance of this moment. Their ears pricked forward attentively. Drawing a deep breath, Michael grasped the reins and pushed open the church doors. A hush fell over the congregation as he limped down the center aisle, leading the horses. Their hooves clicked softly on the wooden floor, an echo of heartbeats in the silence. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. With trembling hands, Michael withdrew the leather-bound ledger from his coat. His voice, though quiet, carried to every corner of the sanctuary. These horses tell a story of stolen dignity, he began. Of corrupt men who took what wasn't theirs, who altered brands and broke families. His fingers traced the worn cover. This ledger holds proof of their theft from native families, proof written in the Army's own hand. Corporal Hayes rose from his seat, face pale but determined. He speaks true, the young soldier said, his voice breaking. I helped record the seizures, changed the brands myself. May God forgive me. Michael opened the ledger and read entry after damning entry. Dates, locations, descriptions, the evidence mounted like storm clouds. The townsfolk's expressions shifted from doubt to anger as understanding dawned. Shouts erupted. Free Anna Yazzie. Arrest Briggs. The crowd surged to its feet. Sheriff Dorsey stood, finally finding his courage. Release Mrs. Yazzie, he ordered his deputy. And Briggs, don't move. But Briggs was already shoving his way toward the door. He knocked over a lamp in his haste, fleeing into the morning light. The Army officer, face ashen with shame, removed his insignia and placed it on the altar. I resign, he announced. What we did was wrong. The church doors burst open again. Anna entered, escorted by the deputy. Her eyes shone with unshed tears as she walked toward Michael. The lamplight caught her face, highlighting her quiet dignity. Without hesitation, Michael reached for her hand, clasping it firmly in his own. Around them, the horses stood calmly, living testimony to truth's victory. Justice had come not through violence, but through courage to speak and willingness to listen. In that moment of triumph, the morning sun streamed through the windows, blessing them all with its golden light. The late March sun warmed the valley as Michael drove, another fence post into the softening earth. Melting snow trickled in rivulets around his boots, carrying winter's last whispers away. The small plot of land, granted by the reservation agent as restitution, spread before them like a canvas of possibility. Nearby, the 5 horses grazed contentedly in the patchy grass emerging from beneath the snow. Their coats gleamed with health now, a far cry from the desperate creatures he had found tangled in the willows. The youngest colt pranced about, testing his stronger legs. While his mother watched with gentle patience, Michael paused, leaning on his post-hole digger to watch Anna work. She wrestled with a sturdy cedar post, her face bright with determination. The post wobbled, threatening to tip, and she burst into laughter as she grabbed it with both hands. "Need help there?" Michael called, smiling. "I reckon I can manage," she answered, still chuckling as she steadied the post. Her joy echoed across the valley, sweeter than any music he had ever known. Michael closed his eyes briefly, offering silent thanks to the Creator. His heart felt lighter than it had in years, unburdened by old guilt and renewed in purpose. The weight of his cavalry days had lifted, replaced by the promise of tomorrow dawned as evening painted the sky in soft purple and gold. They sat together on the cabin's wooden porch. Lamplight spilled through the window behind them, casting a warm glow. The horses moved like shadows in the growing dusk, their soft snorts and the whisper of the wind creating a gentle symphony. Anna settled against him, resting her head on his shoulder. The scent of sage and wild roses drifted from her hair. "We found more than horses in that valley," she whispered, her voice carrying all the warmth of the lamplight. Michael nodded, his throat tight with emotion. In that frozen ravine, he discovered not just abandoned horses, but a path to family, faith, and love. The peace surrounding them now had been hard-won through courage and compassion, yet it felt as natural as breathing. The horses moved closer to the cabin for the night, their presence a living testament to hope and redemption. Here, in this moment, Michael knew he was finally home. If this story made you pause, reflect, or even smile, don't forget to subscribe. I post daily, and the next story might be exactly what you need to hear.